Hi Zeb, it's lovely to have you with us. Tell us about yourself, your family, your friends, and your childhood.
It's lovely to be here. Actually, I had a very, very normal childhood, I would say, very average childhood. My father was in the forces. So, my mother, she kind of uh, ran a very kind of, tight ship. So my parents are very loving and they're very communicative, but we led very disciplined lives. So we had to be in bed by 9 p.m., not much TV. So every time we had summer vacations or we had anything, any kind of holidays, a lot of people would go for holidays with their family, but we would go to our ancestral village, either in Kohat or we'd go to my grandmother's house in Aptabad. So my childhood kind of was spent all over Pakistan also, but also spent in very different environments. Like I stayed in small towns, I used to go experience village life, and then also lived in big cities. So that was how it was.
Wonderful. So, Zeb, what do you remember from your years at school and college?
I mean, there's so many memories, but one thing is that I changed schools a lot because we were moving around. So till my A levels, I changed 16 schools all over Pakistan, and then initially, right till high school, I used to always come first, or I was very kind of academically inclined, but not because I was a hard working child, but I would just I had a knack for academics and all of that. But towards the end of high school, I kind of became a little lost, and I didn't do as well as everyone, especially my parents, but also I myself expected to do. And that, I think, was the first time that I really experienced big failure in my life. And then of course there was there were months and months of a lot of distress and insecurity, which I'd never ever experienced with my academic life. And then I got into college, but thankfully my college was a place which was very nurturing as well as very kind of academically rigorous. So फिर college में I kind of re-established that rhythm of being regular with work, and I think I kind of rediscovered myself academically in college. Otherwise, I mean, I was always I was not a backbencher, but मेरी हरकतें हमेशा ऐसी वाली होती थी.
So, you said your father served in the army and
Yeah.
later he did as a diplomat. You traveled quite a lot. How did that shape you as a person?
I mean, I think that it shapes every aspect of your life. It shapes how you see yourself with relation to the world. It shapes what you think is yours, because when you experience different things as a child, you absorb all of those experiences and they become a part of you. I think one major kind of plus point of this moving around and being exposed to so many different contexts and people is that I don't feel out of place anywhere. I can be in any kind of environment, and I feel quite at home.
Who was your music inspiration initial years में? Is it something जो आपको genes में transfer हुआ है?
हाँ, जीन्स में तो ट्रांसफ़र हुआ है, बिकॉज़ मेरी नानी जो थी वो गाती थी और लिखती भी थी और शायरा थी. घर पे सब लोग ही गाते थे, एंड एवरीवन हैड अ म्यूज़िकल वॉइस एंड दे वर म्यूज़िकल. बट प्रोफेशनली बिल्कुल भी नहीं था माहौल, बहुत ही अलग था. And I think my initial inspiration, along with my own family, would have to be Lata Mangeshkar, because my grandmother used to sing me her lullaby. That's the first song I heard, and so then I would hear the song. And then I think also people like, in my initial early years, it was Shamshad Begum and it was Akhtari Bai. And then later on, in my early teens, it was a lot of Turkish music like Sezen Aksu, Ajda Pekkan, and of course a bunch of music from Hollywood and Bollywood.
So you sing in a number of languages. Is it something natural or did you plan it?
I don't think I could plan something even if I tried it. I'm not very methodical by nature, so I'm very intuitive, and I'm flexible, and that's how I kind of go through life. And so it happened because it happened, and and I went with it, and I love it.
And how many languages exactly can you sing in?
I can sing in many languages. I like to believe I can sing in any language, but so far I've sung in around 16 languages.
Brilliant. So your exploring and curious nature is more like, we can say, a child side, a child aspect in you. Would you ever let it die?
No, I wouldn't, because I would be miserable. And there have been periods in my life when I was not as comfortable with myself. I think as all of us go through adulthood, first thing you think you have to not be yourself, and that's the first thing I did try to kill, is the child inside me. But I was miserable and I was a horrible person, so I don't want to do that. Never.
So what are some of your outdoor activities?
I love walking, I love cycling, I just love even just sitting around and gazing into open space. And nowadays I'm actually doing a bit of weight training, and my trainer loves to train me outside, which is lovely.
Brilliant. Any memories of indoor games from your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. Carom, Ludo, Scrabble, we used to even play Kish indoors. I don't know if you remember Kish, but it was, maybe it's before your time, but it was like this little circle of elastic that we would have, and we would like jump in and out of it. Two girls would stand on each side, and so that was like, that was kind of like a Pakistani national pastime. I don't know why people don't
And
know
what
it
were
anymore.
you best at?
What was I best at? I was very good at softball, and I was a very good swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. So ambition, passion, and interest, define them in your life.
So my interest and my passion go hand in hand. I mean, I cannot be interested in something if I'm a bit of an extremist that way, like if I'm interested in something, I'm all in or all out. And as far as ambition goes, ever since a child, I've been not interested in ambition such as that. I do like to dream a lot, and I have many, hopes and dreams, but they don't really push me to do something. What really pushes me is my passion.
In the process of one's life, it's often said that everything happens for a reason. Do you believe that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that so much, actually. It's a little like annoying for people around me.
Tell us about the Zeb and Hania team, and was the breakup painful?
It was very difficult, but it was necessary. The time was magical. It was something, but we really just kind of fell into this career, this world, all the fame, all the love, the touring. So it really was a magical time. But I think, it was both of us, we were not really completely our own people as far as a musical perspective was concerned. So we needed to explore that separately. And initially it was very, very difficult, but I think it was necessary. Yeah, it happened for a reason.
So how do you think Ustad Sami evolved your singing talent?
With Ustad Sami, I think my evolution with him, or the way I evolved under him, his guidance, I don't think it's linked only to music. And he really has a knack, the gift of really knowing what a student requires, not only in their craft, but also in the kind of person that they are and their humanity. I think that I became a much calmer person. I became a more faith-loving person. I became a more generous person to myself, to my craft, and to the world after I came under his tutelage. And also, I think the biggest gift that I've gotten from my Ustad is that he's really made me understand and take pride in Islamic tradition and Islamic culture. Because Ustad Nasiruddin Sami is kind of like a living museum. He's a walking, talking museum, because he really represents a kind of, and the apex of Muslim South Asian culture. And when you sit with him and you spend time with him and you see his intellectual curiosity, his openness of thought, his generosity of spirit, all of that really inspires you, and it makes you feel so good about, the tradition and the legacy that you are a part of.
Oh, that's beautiful. Are you still a part of the Brooklyn-based music group?
Sandara. Yeah, so this year is our 10th year anniversary. We're a large band. We're around 7 people, 6 now, because one of our band members moved to Berlin a while ago. So during COVID, it was very difficult to stay in touch because everybody was in New York and then people moved out of New York, But this year we want to do something because it's the 10th year. We're all in touch and we do play music whenever we get the chance.
How did you become a part of it, and what was the idea behind it?
I don't know how it happened. It happened completely by accident, as most things happen in my life. But I was very interested in this, in music from this region, in klezmer music also. I happened to meet one of the klezmer musicians that I had been listening to for years. I met him by chance, ended up playing a gig with him. We formed this band. And now 10 years later, we're still together. The idea behind it was that, especially in this day and age, the ideas of identity and cultural identity are always kind of, they're based around national boundaries. But that's not how culture has developed over the years, especially when you're talking about this entire belt, the Middle East and South Asia, because we're talking about some of the most ancient places in the world. So the whole idea was to really re-explore musically some of the cultural linkages that we might have forgotten. So that's why we have people who play klezmer music, Turkish music, our music, and kind of taking songs from ancient Khorasan and bringing them to these traditions.
Mm-hmm. So you've done some soundtracks in Bollywood movies.
Yeah.
Suha Saha from Highway was a huge success. How important do you see these collaborations to be?
I think huge feathers in my cap, or felt like that at the time. But I think I got a lot more out of them. Of course, one is the excitement of being featured in Bollywood, right? I mean, we all love Bollywood songs. We grew up listening to them. And so to finally go to Bombay and get that chance, and not just any chance, but get it with like amazing, your heroes, basically. It's amazing. I felt very validated. I felt very lucky. But also, I think it really made me think about skill, because playback singing, especially the way it's done in India, is a very specific skill set. And it's its own kind of expertise that you need to develop and stuff. And so I think what it really gave me was, it made me think about myself as not just my own voice, but also how my voice could serve other people's perspectives. And that was one thing that I learned from these experiences.
Okay, so describe the essence of your music in 3 words.
That's a really tough one. I think my listener would have to describe it, because for me, my music represents all my emotions. It represents all of me. It's an expression of me. But, I can't really take the essence out, I think.
Okay, so tell us about your experience with title tracks for films at home.
Yeah, I mean, they were lovely experiences, and it's another way in which I think playback and doing other people's work, it really nourishes you, is that it also gives you a real network. So I met a lot of, the big people in the industry through working in films, And then, of course, I was also very, very lucky that I worked with people that I already knew also in films. Like I did Asim Raza's films, both films I did songs for, but then first film I also helped produce music. Then Saqib Malik's film Baji, I did, all the music for. It was just really nice. And Sarmat Khusat ki bhi film thi Kamli, usme I did a track. So these are like, directors and artists that I have collaborated with or known or been very, excited about. And I got to work with them. So it was really nice, yeah.
Your inclusion in the ever popular Equal playlist of Spotify How does it feel to get popular with promoting meaningful stuff?
It feels great. I have to say that I'm still a little overwhelmed by how, the digital age is. I'm very appreciative of it, but I don't really have, a grasp on it. So I'm always a little, people have to come and tell me that this happened or that happened. And then I feel great, but I, sometimes don't really know the intensity of what has happened. But I do know that, I do feel very, very blessed that I'm able to reach audiences all over because of this stuff now. It's so easy. And it really feels like it really feels like it's a disruptive force that has really helped the artist.
Definitely. Tell us about Saaf Hawa.
Saaf Hawa is a really beautiful project that I love to bits. It's basically a project that was commissioned by the NGO with Saaf Hawa, which is kind of an NGO linked to the United Nations. And for many, many years now, they have been working on clean air projects. And being from Lahore, aapko pata hai, I mean, it's a heartbreaking thing for us because, for us, winters were times that you never sat inside. It was always that you sat outside and, the canoes and the parks and just the spending time in the afternoons. The Lahori winter afternoon was such an important part of my life. And it's been kind of taken away from us for the past so many years. And this year and the year before, it was actually poisonous to be outside. So when this project came to me, I really leapt at it. It took around 2 to 3 years in the making. And the more I kind of got involved, the more serious I realized the issue was, because it wasn't just about not being able to have outings outside, but it actually really impacts your health and it impacts your lifespan. And the thing that really bothered me is that now they have found that the first time that dirty air will ever affect a human is when that human is a fetus. So you're actually taking away the chance of a healthy life from children, and that really bothered me. And women and children are the ones that suffer the most from this. So I was a part of it. I became the voice of it. Shantanu Moitra in India, he was a friend also, and I collaborated with him in Kya Khayal Hai. So he's a big environmental lover as well. So he created the track, and it's very close to my heart. And I hope that through these efforts we can really start talking about clean air first.
Yeah, and not just that, your name also ranks high on the list of ambassadors for peace and culture. What would you want to say about that?
I didn't know it did. But yeah, I just feel that I have been able to, through my experiences, and especially through being a musician, I've been able to really traverse areas and be part of communities and places that, otherwise as a Pakistani one can't. And I felt really sad that, where we find ourselves today is we feel very isolated in an international kind of a setting. We feel like an island. And so I feel it's very, very important to take positive messages, to take, to bring all the best energy and all the best things that we have here, to first internalize them and then to also connect them with the rest of the world.
Yeah. So tell us about the Sami Qawwals and the documentary you're working on.
So this is a very interesting project that this amazing cultural center in Baltimore is helping fund, and we're working with Professor Humaira Ziad from Johns Hopkins University, and we're really kind of working towards teaching young students the idea of the healing khayal, because khayal, is a Muslim kind of invention. Around 800 years ago, it was made under the auspices of in Khaja Nizamuddin's court. It was made by Hazrat Amir Khusro, and one of the earliest proponents and one of his only student, Ustad Samat. His descendants are actually based in Pakistan, and they are part of the Sami brothers, and Ustad Nasiruddin Sami is part of that family. So after I got to know that, this is the family that I'm dealing with, and this is the level of and the depth of knowledge that they have, I felt very passionately about wanting to really push this forward and to have other people experience it in the way that it has healed me, or it has benefited me. So I spoke to my friend who's a professor, and the two of us got together and we created this residency, and it's going to be happening this spring and summer in Lahore for the first time, and then for the next 2 years it'll be happening in America. And let's see how it goes. And of course, there's going to be a documentary around it as well. And the whole basis of it is that, we look at Qawwali, we look at classical singing, we look at all of these things as secular art forms and as forms that are based for entertainment. Whereas in reality, they're really rooted deep in our spiritual learning. They are part of the legacy of Islamic cultural innovation, and they're one of the most beautiful things that our Islamic civilization has given to the world. And I think as Muslims, we must, especially as Muslim artists, not that that's my only identity, but as a Muslim and as an artist, I feel that it's very important to know about these things. And unfortunately, somehow, because there's all this controversy around the arts and spirituality in today's idea of Islam, we sometimes forget how much Muslim arts have given to the world. And so we really want other people to benefit from it, and we want to share this with pride and love.
You will be managing the program for the Center for Cultural Vibrancy in Baltimore. Please, उसके बारे में please elaborate.
तो ये बेसिकली इसी रेजिडेंसी का हिस्सा होगा जो यहाँ पे लाहौर में हम करेंगे. इसमें ये है कि बेसिकली ऑफ कोर्स यू कांट टीच स्टूडेंट्स ख्याल in a few months, but what you can do is कि आप बच्चों को उनकी आवाज़ों से, ज़रूरी नहीं कि वो बच्चे हो, बट स्टूडेंट्स को यू कैन उनकी अपनी आवाज़ों से आगाह कर सकते हैं. सो दे कैन स्टार्ट गेटिंग टू लिटरली नो देयर वॉइस, एंड देन ऑल्सो ऑल द अदर स्पिरिचुअल इफेक्ट्स दैट हैपन एज दे गेट टू नो देयर वॉइस. All of that stuff will be documented, and they will be guided along the way from Dr. Humaira Ziad, and then these findings will be actually used in her class in Johns Hopkins University. She is a professor of Sufism, to see how voice activation and the healing ideas around khayal have helped students who express themselves or gain deeper knowledge of themselves. We're going to then use these findings and work with students in Baltimore, and hopefully, students who really need that level of healing, whether it's whether they're going through trauma, or whether it's they're from from other communities. And so us tarah se we're going to work with them and see how that translates. So it's going to be both an observational study, but uske saath we're also trying to kind of impart a certain art form. So that's what we're doing.
Wonderful. So you have performed in many countries. How's your music perceived in everywhere that you go you've performed?
I mean, it's perceived differently in different places, but I think I've only gotten a lot of love, and it's something that I have to say is that the songs that always do the best abroad are the traditional songs. And I think because so early in my career, I started doing stuff abroad, and I was, performing abroad, I kind of got that sense. In 2010, I also had the opportunity to perform in the same, kind of on the same stage as Abda Parveen, and, and also so the kind of control that our traditional artists have over the audience, over any global audience, because really, like, that music and that skill is so rooted. You know, one thing that I've realized is that that is really where the gold is. And unfortunately, you know, when we go towards modern music, we forget about traditional music, which is not something that I would recommend. I would say go as modern as you can, but, you know, keep it rooted at the same time. You know, that's my biggest lesson, and that's what I followed.
So, Zeb, you are the first and only female Pakistani music director of the award-winning Bollywood film Lipstick Under My Burqa. What did you like most about being the part of it?
I think I loved being a part of, I love the friendships that I formed, because the director, Alankrita, and Anvita Dutt, who now recently made this lovely film, Kala also, we all three of us were like a little, you know, we're a little kind of Powerpuff Girl situation happening there ourselves. So it was a lot of fun. It was, we used to listen to a lot of music. There was a lot of hanging out, even outside the film. And I really kind of formed a sisterhood through that film. That's what I loved the most about it.
As an artist in your journey, what would you say were some of the challenges that you faced?
I think the biggest challenge that I continue to face is boxing. You know, like people want to always tell you that there's always some kind of a judgment about you, like really upfront, like either, you know, you're like the soulful singer, or you're the traditional singer, or you're this kind of singer. And that, I think, you know, I always find like strange, and I find it a little bit stifling, because I want to be able to be free to try out different things, but the market only gives you what it's seen of you. So it wants to repeat, it never wants to really kind of, you know, help you experiment. So then I realized that all the experimentation had to happen on my clock and not anyone else's clock. Another thing that I think I find very strange about the music industry in general is that it becomes increasingly visual. And I think that at some level that takes away from just really listening to an artist because you love their voice. So the visual aspect to singing or music has now become extremely important, and in some cases even more important than what they're singing. So that, to me, I'm still old school that way, so I struggle with that.
So about experimentation, what song, what number would you say of yours is the most experimental and you challenge yourself with it?
Actually, you know, my most experimental songs ever are just about to be released, because I did this whole album. I've just done an electronic album that I recorded entirely with an American band and producer in LA, and it's super experimental, and it's really fun. So that's on the top of my list.
Amazing. So any highlights from your performance at the Tufts University?
It was just a really beautiful experience for me, because, you know, also one of my biggest idols, Amartya Sen, was there, and I got to meet him, and I got to sing, you know, some of these old Bengali inspired tracks to him. So it was just a very beautiful environment, and to see, especially post-COVID, to be on stage with my band and, you know, be singing songs from all over South Asia and to a very diverse audience from South Asia. It was a really amazing experience.
Who would you say are your all-time heroes?
My dad.
Oh, that's sweet.
And yeah. Yes, I think I'm definitely very enamored by my father. So I think, like, him, my grandmother, a lot of my mother. I would say that I take a lot of inspiration and strength from my family. So it would have to be them. and of course my ustad, who has supported me so much.
Wonderful. Is it your passion that powers your musical narrative, or is it more than that?
It is my passion, yeah. It is my passion.
So, how is it falling in love and getting married?
It's a journey. It's it keeps changing every now and then, but falling in love is always lovely. Falling out of love is not great, but falling in love is always great.
Would you say you're romantic by nature?
By nature, I am romantic. I'm actually somewhere in the middle because I have a romantic nature, but when it really comes to, acting on romance or whatever, I'm definitely not someone who's very, I'm more interested in activities and intellectual pursuits and things like that. But I am romantic by nature, yes.
And would you say you share that relationship with your music as well?
Absolutely. I romance with my music, and yeah.
Is there a Sufi in you?
I don't know. Possibly not.
You had something to do with banking, right? Fill us
That's
on.
right. Yeah. I was a banker, for I think a year and a half.
So how did that happen, and how did you make the shift?
I made the shift because I had to. No, that happened because I was actually, I studied economics in college, and I actually applied to a lot of banks. I mean, that's what I thought I was going to be doing, working at a financial institution. And so then I came to Pakistan and I applied to a bank and I got the job. And yeah, I mean, I was okay at it, I guess. But it wasn't for me. I made quite a few blunders also. It wasn't for me.
So what was that moment in which you decided, okay, you're not doing it anymore?
I think I think it was this like check that I tore. When, like, I had two checks. One check I had to deposit and another check I had to tear, and the client was screaming at me and I didn't know what to do, and I just tore the check that was valid, and then I tried to deposit the check that didn't have anything on it. And so, I got into a lot of trouble. I remember that day was a disaster because the bank teller was angry at me, the client was angry at me, the client whose check I'd torn obviously was really mad at me. And then the floor manager also gave me an earful at the end of the day. So I just, cried myself to sleep and I said, please, get me out of this, God, get me out of this.
So a love letter to Kabul. You said it comes out of love to honor a culture that has nurtured us. Please share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really realize when we think about Afghanistan these days, or we think about Afghan culture, we don't realize how hybrid our culture is. It goes back to those kind of forgotten historical connections. And so I have a friend, Dr. Waleed Ziad, and he was telling me actually about, he's a history professor, and Afghans have a lot to do with actually the setting up of Lahore itself, right? So this history of Lahore itself has Afghani roots. Now, I didn't know that, having lived here, but some of its earliest settlements were done by Afghans. One of our biggest saints here, Tata Ganj Bakhsh, was from that part of the world. Then along with that, you also have Lahore really found its real place in the world when the Persianate culture really fueled it, and that all came from Central Asia. So when this the past few years, as we've seen the Afghan people going through a lot of stress and a lot of political turmoil, I thought it might be nice to have to record these 3 songs that are kind of odes to old Afghan ustads. They're all 3 ustads: Ustad Biltun, Ustad Nashanas, and Ustad Sheda. So these 3 ustads of Kabul, I've taken their songs, sung them with another Afghani singer, Shamali Afghan, but we got them recorded and we got them the videos made here with Hashim Ali and Amna Zubairi and Uwais Kohar and Daniel Hussain. So we basically just it became like a Lahori artist's ode or homage to Afghani culture. So that was where Love Letters to Kabul came from.
Amazing. Your song, Roche, tell us about it. It has been popular, and what's the story behind it?
So Roche is a very interesting story because again it goes into the idea of not really knowing the people who surround you. I mean, Lahore, as you know, is filled with Kashmiris and as Pakistanis and as South Asians. I think Kashmir is in our minds all the time. But growing up here, and I never knew that Kashmir had its own language. I remember when I was performing at the South Asians Bands Festival in the Purana Qila at Delhi. At the end of that festival, hundreds of these like young boys came up. I thought they looked Pathan or something. So they came up and they said, "Thank you so much for singing our music. Thank you so much for singing our music." I said, "Oh, where are you from?" They said, "Kashmir." I said, "Am I singing your music?" And they said, "No, but you're singing with our instruments." And I said, "Your instrument?" And they said, "Yes, rabab is a Kashmiri instrument." Now, I didn't know this. I said, "Oh, really?" I thought it was Afghan. Anyways, we had a little bit of a fight because they were like, "No, it's Kashmir." I was like, "Oh, I think it's not." Anyways, they ended up telling me that I should sing in Kashmiri. And that's the first time that I even was aware of the fact that Kashmiri itself is a language. And I got when I started listening to Kashmiri songs and seeing how beautiful their poetry and their music is, and that language is extremely special because it doesn't sound like any other language. उसमें जिस किस्म के लफ्ज़ हैं, जो phonetics हैं, वो बहुत specific हैं. And I felt so sad that all my life, Kashmir is something I've always talked about, thought about, I've heard people talk about it, it's always on the news. And we don't even know that it has its own specific culture, language, poets. So usse ye baat nikli, and that's how I discovered Habba Khatun, who is the last princess of Kashmir and is also a very celebrated poet and musician. And this song, Roche, is her song. So this was a kind of a tribute to her.
You keep surprising the audience with your versatility. Is it a part of your personality or is it your inner voice?
Yeah, I think I get bored very easily. So sometimes I just get bored with what I'm doing. So I want to do something else. I think it's my curiosity. It's part of my inner nature, I think, to try something different. Also, I like to challenge myself. So that's what it is.
Tell us about some of your upcoming projects and how do you predict 2023 to be for yourself?
Well, there are so many projects. I have my album coming out. I have another project which I can't talk about and another project which I can't talk about. But I think 2023 is going to be just great.
Women empowerment is critical to sustainable communities. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think women empowerment is critical to any kind of development or any kind of like real equilibrium in any society.
And how important do you think it is for women to play a role in advocating to the access of equal opportunities?
I think it's very, very important because I think there are certain issues that women go through, that only they can voice. Unless we keep our women safe in our societies, we won't be able to really progress. So I think women's voices have to be included in every aspect of life, and I think they have to be present in every aspect of life. And
what's a promising solution you believe in as an advice to our leaders would be in these difficult times?
I would just say that it's always helpful for us to feel safe under leaders who seem to care about the country and its people.
Some of your music reveals underlying suffering and plight of people in other parts of the world. What exactly is the message close to your heart that you're trying to give out?
I think that sometimes when, places are known for the politics or the war or something else, what we forget is that there's human beings that are living there, because people that live there just become, like when you think about Afghans, you think about war, and but you don't think about learning, you don't think about weddings, you don't think about love, you don't think about, humor, you don't, but all of that stuff, wherever you have human beings, you have all of these shades of humanity, of living. And I think what's always been very disturbing to me is that people who are especially reported on in a specific kind of way, their humanity is somehow flattened. And I think by doing songs from those regions, my hope is that I can bring some of that emotion and some of that human kind of expression to the rest of the world and show some of its beauty, hopefully.
The sense of entitlement over everything we human beings have is overwhelming. Do you think we are consumed with self and need to rather transform it with a sense of gratitude and giving back to the world?
I see two things working together almost simultaneously, because at one level, I think this idea of like doing well, being ambitious, individual expression, individual success and all of that does make one very self-centered. But at the same time, I also see a lot of people, even abroad, kind of really exploring the idea of, our interconnectivity, community, giving back, and all of that is based around a sense of, say, being grateful for what you have. And I think COVID, in some ways, did change that, and it even heightened those differences. I think people who were kind of into this kind of consuming culture are like really into it now. Like, I mean, everything, the spending has gone over the roof post COVID. But a lot of people, I think, also recognize that they don't need so much to be happy, that they want to be around their families, that they don't want to live, lives alone, working so hard just to get a bigger place where they can sit alone and watch television on their own. So I think that both these trends are going together, and it's an interesting time.
We need to build a world that's fit for our children. At this point, what are the 3 things you would like to see become the common way of life for our next generation?
I think I'd like to see a lot more kindness and openness. I think that there's a lot of judgment around on kids. Kids themselves are judging other kids, and then they're also judging adults, and adults are judging kids, and it's just not a very kind space where difference of opinion can be expressed in a nice way. So I think that I'd like to see a lot more of.
At any point in life, if you were to see yourself in public service, what would it be for?
I would say definitely for children.
The climate emergency is real. Do you think we are in denial?
Yeah, we're in complete denial. And especially here, I myself was in denial, at least in partial denial. But as I've become more and more educated about it, I'm surprised at how little we really care about. We are the worst city in the world for air, and yet it doesn't really feature in our chats about what we need to do, in order to move forward. So,
do you have any favorite Islamic teachings that inspire you?
Yeah, I mean, there's many. I take inspiration from a lot of teachings, but I think the idea of tawakkul really inspires me, and it guides me, and it's kept things. It really keeps you open to the magic of living, and I found it a real value add to my life, because anytime something that you think is bad happens, you don't look at it as something that yes, you get hurt by it, you suffer because of it, but then also it's a kind of a guiding force, because it tells you what isn't meant for you or where you shouldn't go. And I find that really interesting, because it can lead you to some really unexpected, brilliant places.
Okay, so talking about cultural diversity, We see lack of tolerance. What do you say?
Lack of tolerance in everything, why did you say this, why did you do that, and that's because we're looking at people through issues, we're not looking at people through humanity. So we've created a bunch of isms, and then you're either on this side of it or that side of it. Whereas, human beings' relationships to their own politics are also, it's an ever evolving thing. So, where you start is not necessarily where you'll end up, because you keep changing and your relationship to your ideas keep changing. But I feel like nowadays we don't have the space to even express that, because you'll be cancelled by one or the other.
Besides all the shortfalls and challenges that we're facing, Pakistan and its people, they're beautiful. What would you want to say?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm very, very deeply invested, and I'm very deeply emotional about this land and its beautiful people, and also its beautiful culture and its music. So I want to always be connected to it and always be working with it, inshallah.
Okay, Zeb, do you get hurt easily?
I'm very sensitive, so I do. I used to get hurt very easily, but now not so much. Yeah, not so much.
And what would you say make you sad, happy, or angry?
What makes me angry is, I think, when I feel a little like out of control, especially in work situations. That's when I get angry. What makes me sad is seeing suffering. That makes me really sad. When I see other people suffering also, like it could also just be like someone sad at home and I'll feel sad. I'm a bit of a sponge emotionally. And what makes me happy is, like, I try to find happiness in most things. Just small things make me happy. Sitting with my family makes me happy. Going for a walk makes me happy. My work makes me happy. My working hard makes me happy.
And it's said that laughter is the best medicine. You believe in that? Do you smile
Absolutely.
throughout the day?
I do smile throughout the day, and I love. And actually, I'm really into humor and comedy. So I like to always be watching funny things online. I follow a lot of comedians, and I do a little bit of comedy myself, my friends and family. So.
Thank you so much, Zeb. It was lovely talking to you. We would just like to end it with a little medley from you.
Oh, thank you. Sure. So I'll sing some like little snippets of little songs.
Wonderful.
Okay. धड़कनों की ताल बाजे सांसों का एक तारा आंगन में सजाए बैठे सूरज चंदा तारा चलो बांट ले हम जिंदगी जरा आज यूं कर ले कहो क्या ख्याल है साकी जामरा का रुमिदता दे तृष्णा कांडेरदी नौबत समा दे दलबो प्याला राफे मोनका दजड़ चमन में बेरता था सखा वलाड़ पगाड़ी सायल गदादी तृष्णा कांडेरदी नौबत समादी मेरा इश्क भी तू मेरा यार भी तू मेरा इश्क भी तू मेरा यार भी तू